Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm your host, Mary Fran Johnson, CEO of Mary Fran Johnson Media, and a contributing columnist and writer on CIO.com, where I cover boardroom and career strategies for technology leaders. Today, we welcome Fairfax County, Virginia, as a new sponsor of CIO Leadership Live. Innovation and opportunity for all is what Fairfax County has to offer, and you are invited to start, expand, or relocate your business to this global tech hub located just outside Washington, D.C. The corporate community there is accomplishing mission-critical work and making the world a better place. To learn more, go to fairfaxcountyeda.org. We're streaming to you live now on both LinkedIn and YouTube, and we welcome our viewers to join in today's conversation with questions of your own. Our editors will be watching for those questions and will do their best to pass them along to my guest, who I'm very pleased today to have as Ken Spangler. He is an executive vice president of IT and the CIO of the Global Operating Company Technologies for FedEx. Ken has spent the bulk of his technology leadership career with FedEx, and he's unique among the senior IT leaders there in having served as CIO of all four of the company's major multi-billion-dollar global business units. That means he has been the CIO at various times of FedEx Express, FedEx Ground, Freight, and Logistics. Widely known in the technology industry and pretty much every other industry for a thriving culture of innovation. FedEx is a $90 billion plus business employing more than 600,000 people around the world and serving customers across 220 countries and territories. FedEx runs one of the largest air operations in the world with more than 700 aircraft and a ground fleet of more than 210,000 motorized vehicles, all to deliver more than 16 million shipments every day. So it's a very busy place there. And Ken, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining me today.
Mary Fran, it's an honor to be here with you. It's great to be on your show today.
Excellent. Well, I want you to start out. Tell us a little bit more about the meaning and the scope of your CIO role, which was created in 2020 for this Global Operating Company Technologies. How does that work across the four businesses that I mentioned, and what had to change to make that work?
Well, it's a good question. It's a complex question, and I'll try to answer it briefly. But basically, and prior to that, as you said, I had really grown up in different operating companies, mainly in FedEx Ground, is where it's the most automated, largest transactions of the businesses. But I was the CIO there a long time, and then FedEx Freight, then it was Express and Logistics as an executive vice president of our global part. But in 2020, we made a decision, and really it was part of a change in the corporation where we changed our strategic operating principles. There's three of them. It's only 6 words, but I always like to say they're a powerful 6 words. But we changed our strategic operating principles to compete collectively, operate collaboratively, and innovate digitally. And that operate collaboratively and innovate digitally said the synergies across these big, huge operating companies was very important. We're a federated business. We're one of the large federated businesses in the world. And clearly, the prior strategic operating principles had operated independently. So starting in 2020, there was a dedicated focus on alignment of the technology, synergies across the companies, and that's why the role became so important. So it was at that point that we created this role to have. So basically what that means is the senior vice president and CIOs of each of the operating companies and our international regions report to me, and we align as one team.
Okay. Well, it's funny too, because I always think of FedEx as already being very aligned and very collaborative and very innovative. So that I want you to dwell a little bit more on that operating collaboratively. What sort of things changed in the last 2 years? And I know this was very much a rising to the occasion presented by the pandemic.
Well, one of the things, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the situation of the pandemic let us leap to the future. We call it a slingshot to the future. The business as a whole, especially e-commerce, because of what we do for a living, right? We early in the pandemic, we said we slingshot 5 years to the future. in the
Yeah.
amount of growth, physical and digital growth and digital, capacity, et cetera. So, when that happened, we had always, obviously things like shared infrastructure, shared networks, and we had always created a lot of synergy in that type of capabilities. However, prior to that, the operating companies were empowered to be, and still are, to be the best in every segment. But
Mhm.
that meant there was a lot of uniqueness in the operating companies.
Ah.
And the biggest change as we leaped ahead or slingshot ahead, like as we like to say, the capabilities, the shared capabilities, the scaled capabilities, and the ability to use the other network. An example is, we started something, and we've talked about this publicly a lot, we call last mile optimization. In our
Okay.
parcel businesses in the US, the FedEx Express and FedEx Ground businesses were both at record capacities during the pandemic and still have amazing capacity or, volumes today. But we started to utilize cross-network capabilities for volume, for weather challenges, et cetera. So last mile optimization said we would put it in the right network at the right cost to serve. And in that case, it was FedEx Ground delivering some FedEx Express packages. So that's the just one example, to give you a real world example, the way we optimize the network. It's about network optimization when you get to this kind of scale, and especially this kind of short-term growth. And so that became a major of ours, where we like the uniqueness and the power of the operating companies. We want to have the best of both worlds right now. Still have, these businesses are all special, and they're very geared towards, meeting the demands of the marketplace and especially our customers. But the synergy across them is really important.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your customers and the way that the changes and the tweaks you've been making to your digital business models, the way those have had an impact on them. I had one CIO on recently that just kind of summed up the last 2 years as working through the great uncertainty. It's so hard to know what the next 6 months will bring, and that has had an impact on planning everywhere. How have your customers what kind of impact have you seen? And maybe give us an example of a response to that from FedEx.
Yeah, and first of all, it's a great question, and there's multiple aspects of that question. Definitely in the customer sense, just like our physical networks slingshot ahead to significantly more volume and demands, the digital networks had to move ahead. And I would say, the first thing is truly being a digital enterprise. Most of the time, if you go back, some years, when most people would say digital, they meant just digital access. And how do you have mobile capabilities, et cetera. And clearly that's important. It's incredibly important. But that's that's just the entry point. What we've seen over the last few years is really digital enablement of the business as a whole. And that is, to our focus, it's been an incredibly accelerated focus on data. So first of all, let me say, during the pandemic, it was about scale, right? That was everybody, including a remote workforce. I don't want to leave that. I mean, we'll definitely talk about the customer, but I don't want to leave out the fact that, all businesses, when people, we had to protect everybody and you started to have as many people as you could work remotely, we had to scale that. And that's one of the most amazing things that happened for all businesses, right? And one of the things we even talked about, we had some really significant technology initiative successes. And when we were talking to the board, one of the things we actually said is, what we learned the most is what we focus on and how we do it, how we architect and engineer became much more important than where we do it. Okay. So that was kind of the internal focus. Now, externally to the customers, it was truly becoming a digital enterprise. So what it was digital access, sure, but it was digital optimization. It was creating a new level of visibility of supply chains. And in that sense, this is really an important part and something really we're proud of at FedEx is, we're driving ahead a focus where we actually created an entity, a separate part of FedEx called DataWorks. And DataWorks, in a strategic partnership with Microsoft, we are increasing all kinds of visibility and optimization for our customers and for our network. So, that's probably the greatest example I can give you is by creating DataWorks, by majoring in this space of all decision science, all machine learning, AI, we are majoring in that, and we are first of all benefiting our customers and also benefiting the types of service, the capabilities we can provide, et cetera, as we optimize the network in real time and beyond.
Yeah. Well, and I remember one of the things we talked about, and I think this was a question that truly has been settled for not just CIOs and technology leaders, but for CEOs as well, that where you're working and what you're doing when you're working there is the productivity doesn't suffer. In fact, it's been, if anything, it got a little lopsided. It got so people were a little too productive working from home. But you tell me the story again about what the 6 hours of wasted time commuting you found in your own week.
Well, and it was one of those accidental finds. We all have had a joke in business or in our personal lives. We always, say, if only I had that 8th day of the week, that's just a joke forever, right?
Yeah.
And early in the pandemic, we were working a lot because, we were running a global network and the demands on that global network were amazing. We had even kind of a daily 7 a.m. call just on operational focus areas every single day.
Mhm.
I started to find out is it was amazing how much more we had moving at the same time and able to stay closely connected to it. And so just, I'm an analytical person, obviously by background of what I do, but right away I started to figure out why are we able to get more focused on this? And in my own personal case, my office is in Memphis, Tennessee, headquarters of FedEx, but we have significant campuses here. We have a lot of people, and we were all in lots of physical meetings and moving and traveling, etc.
Yeah.
And I did a quick study, and I realized that just the logistics of being in all these different meetings, all these different places, there was an average of 6 hours a week that was utilized in moving, physically moving. That all of a sudden, when you were digitally moving to these same meetings, it disappeared. So that was my joke became I found the 8th day of the week. And, but that was, and if you got on airplanes or so, it was a lot more than that. Now, don't get me wrong. Like when I leave this meeting with you or this event with you, I go to a planning meeting where we're going to be in person. There's so much benefit and so much power to being in person. And
I know.
Collaboration, synergy, ideation, all that's incredibly important. However, the hybrid world, the hybrids always win is what we're finding. The benefit was incredible to be able to digitally move at the same speed or to even a faster speed.
Yeah.
And now we're finding we need both of those.
Well, and I think, and didn't you tell me that's one of Rob Carter's famous sayings that hybrids always win?
Rob has said that for years. In fact, he always says when he retires someday, he may write a book called Hybrids Always Win. And we have found that at FedEx. I mean, obviously Rob's just a brilliant guy and a great leader. And we're always looking at the future. And that's what we often find. If we get too harsh and we're not open-minded, that, sometimes we miss the cues. So we're always open, especially under, Rob's vision of hybrid models. And it's interesting the way post-pandemic, the way we even see our workforce, and everybody talks about today, hybrid and workforce is common, but we view it hybrids in technology and, digital, et cetera. So.
Yeah. Well, and in some ways, it seems almost obvious. We're having all these conversations among CIOs, CEOs, boards of directors. What is the workplace of the future going to look like? When I think it seems to me and the technology leaders I talk to that it's very clearly going to be hybrid and that technology is going to enable that. So it's almost like it's becoming more of a work cadence or a flow, or maybe it's become an HR issue of how you figure out this hybrid workplace of the future. Tell me what some of your companies, what has changed in them as they have adapted to being everybody's hybrid. As you say, you're going into a meeting later today with lots of people in person, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be full-time in person for the rest of the year.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we've created, I'll describe a couple concepts. One of our core colors is FedEx is purple, right? So we actually call it Purple Flex. So the branding of what we see the future is Purple Flex. And in there's a lot of things that I think a lot of companies are talking about, like what are team days? When do teams get together and that's a team day, and in those cases, it's a lot more in person. But clearly it's a hybrid model. We have found, and this is, I think, at the heart of your question is, humans always learn and adapt, right? And during the pandemic, we learned so many benefits. And we found that, where this is the digital generation, right? And as the digital generation knows that there's so many ways to be connected and work and be effective with your time. So we want to utilize that. We want to have the best of that. And yet the idea of Purple Flex and team days is there's a lot of cultural aspects. There's a lot of brainstorming, I said ideation before, design thinking. A lot of you can certainly do that remotely. And we do it every day. But
Yeah.
there's some advantages. There's certainly advantages of when you're in person. So for us, it has been about, even redesigning a lot of our facilities, modernizing our facilities, creating, the environment where people can sign up, whether it's a hoteling capability or any kind of, whiteboarding space or any collaboration space. Obviously we have, we work in all agile. So, we have a lot of space for that. But the whole concept has been under Purple Flex, and what we're doing about team days is how we're really making hybrid be real. I always call it making it real. That's our part of making it real.
Okay. Well, let's pivot next to talk a little bit more about the technology and, well, it's really technology and business priorities moving forward. What sort of things have shifted up or down your list as you look into the rest of 22 and even 2023?
Well, clearly there's the traditional things for everybody. I mean, obviously on the cyber front, that is just an every day, every minute, that is clearly a top focus and will continue to be that going forward. There's no end in sight to that. But I would kind of start your question at the very beginning and say, we were very focused even pre-pandemic and have just accelerated during the pandemic about truly being a lean, agile enterprise. Everybody will say, we're agile, and we were too. We were doing agile development many years ago, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But really, we drove a program, enterprise business agility. And sure, it was based on the principles of SAFe, the Scaled Agile Framework. But very important to us, it was in a federated business. How do we understand what are the enterprise priorities of FedEx Corporation, as well as what are the unique priorities in these huge, as you've introduced, multi-billion-dollar businesses themselves. So our program, our focus on this is enterprise business agility to do that, to determine. And then underneath of that, there's really two big arms. There is what we call common lean portfolio management, and simplified to its easiest term, it's common processes, taxonomy, and tooling about what we work on and how we work around the enterprise. And then number two is truly having enterprise portfolio management, which says, we have multiple portfolios, simplified down, the operating companies are each a portfolio, and then we have an enterprise portfolio. So with that said, the answer, that's the setup of saying we have focused on the equal balance of the what and the how we work. And that's made us so much more efficient. And then, besides cyber, there's clearly tremendous focus on network optimization. We have a lot of focus on that. That's become an increasing, dedicated focus of FedEx Corporation. There's a lot of dedicated, we're always modernizing, right? We always keep modern technologies, keep it up to date, keep it patched, all those things. But we believe there's a dedicated focus on untethering from the past. So legacy technologies that are still, inside and are core to companies, they don't just fade away. You have to focus on them. So we have a lot of focus on untethering from the past and legacy technologies. And a lot of them we're most of the way through, but the sticky part's the hard part. So we're doing a lot of that, and we're really focused in three areas. Environment shaping. So think of, and I'll give you a real world example. We made a decision, we were not in the future going to run FedEx owned data centers. We've mostly retired every one of them internationally. We still have some US data centers, but over the next 5 years, we are going to what we call a 0-50-50 strategy, which is colo. We will run our own stack in a colo data center, or data centers, obviously plural, and then cloud. So it's a cloud and colo strategy, but there's also an edge part of this. So the other answer to your question is, besides cyber and a lot of the network optimization, but this untethering from the past is the lead to, it's the release to the future. And clearly that is a future where we're running all of our technology stack and colo and cloud capabilities. Yeah. And certainly data, and I'm not trying to say these are in particular because, data is just a tremendous focus of ours. And that's another one. So I'm just trying to give you the big buckets that have accelerated to your question in the last couple of years. Those have clearly and dramatically accelerated in the last few years.
Right. Well, I remember when we talked to, you were explaining about the way the strategic operating principles had changed, and they were the PSP model, people, service, profits. That was kind of the past. Talk about the new pillars, the things that you're operating under, because these impact the way you act as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple, let me frame this up. There's the strategic operating principles. which are based on, and I mentioned those earlier, they're based on the structure of the corporation and how we come to market. Compete collectively, that means we're one FedEx to our customers in the marketplace. Okay.
Yes.
Operate collaboratively recognizes the fact that we run these specialized, huge, operating companies, but we're collaborating across them powerfully. And Innovate Digitally says we're changing what's possible in supply chains and networks, around the world. But what you were referring to also and was our culture. So that's our strategic operating principles, but our cultural principles, and this is the brilliance of Fred Smith from the very beginning, but our culture is based on people, service, profit. It's a continuum. It's all three of those continuing to be successful together, but with being a people first company. So that's our culture. But we just recently updated what we call our cultural values. And there are 5 cultural values that are, I think they speak so much of what FedEx is about. Number 1 is take care of each other. Number 2 is commit to do good. Number 3 is own outstanding. Number 4 is drive business results. And then number 5 is create what's next. Any one of those 5, they all have we have breakdowns of them. They all mean something. But put together, it's a summation of people, service, profit. It's that continuum. If we do all those things and we create and do good things for our customers, our shareholders, our employees, then great things will happen. So updating cultural values have been very important to us. And, while they're all equally important, it was no surprise or no mystery at all why take care of each other was number 1. It's a big part of the people first culture of FedEx.
Well, and you'd mentioned too that instead of a lot of individual priorities, this kind of connectivity and these discussions you've been having about the cultural changes and all, that this is so well suited for the era of the connected enterprise. And I feel like that's something that we've talked about a lot with CIOs over the years, but it feels more real these days for some reason. Do you find that? Am I just making that up?
No, absolutely. In fact, it's one of my, probably primary talking points whenever I talk to any of our large groups. And I just did a global town hall last week of my team all around the world. And I had our CFO we did a kind of a fireside chat. And one of the things, both myself and our CIO were focused on is this is clearly the era of the connected enterprise. And it's the era of value. And it's identifying what's true value, what's the value you're after, and then realizing the value. And so for us, especially as being a, massive global corporation, but also one that's had a federated business model, it has been that's value comes from the connection of the enterprise. So literally, and again, you just set this question up. We didn't pre-plan this at all, but literally, if I said my town hall by the end of it ended up, we didn't plan it this way, but it was meant to be just a town hall. We take live questions and everything. But if I said it ended with 2 themes, the 2 themes were connected enterprise. It's the era of the connected enterprise that's accelerating. And the second big theme is the way we identify and realize value is going to have a whole different level of focus going forward. Yeah. And so again, it's the connected enterprise enables that, but we're here to drive value for employees, customers, shareholders. We have to drive value across the board. And that's where the focus has really gone for us.
Well, and when you think about that list of 5, how it's take care of each other is first, and I know they're not necessarily in order of importance, but it's really, I don't know, it's nice to see that, driving business results is not always number 1. I think that's a lot that the world has learned over the last 2 years with what everybody is going through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a balance across all of them.
Sure.
Clearly the taking care of each other, that was purposely number 1, but if you think of even drive business results and create what's next, both of them matter. You're driving results, but if you just drive results and you're not a business that's looking and driving and building and delivering on the future, well, then that driving business results will be short-lived. Yeah. That's one of the things that's, maybe I'm just proud of, or I've been excited about of being in FedEx for so many years. Clearly with a founder and chairman, Fred Smith, it's always been his focus. In fact, one of our big pillars is where now meets next. I mean, one of our, in fact, it's been in marketing, see it as we go to the marketplace, you hear us talk a lot about where now meets next. And we have to deliver today, we have to do great things today, but we have to contribute in all parts, whether it's, sustainability and overall ESG or anywhere else. Where now meets next, we have to be both. And so that's why when you look at those cultural values, they tell you a lot about what we really believe and what we do.
Yeah. Well, and that reminds me too, when we were talking earlier, you told me that one of the FedEx sayings inside of IT is to ask the question, are these jobs or assignments? That there are some things that become so important, like with FedEx DataWorks, for instance, that it's not just somebody's assignment that they add onto their job, but it becomes a job in and of itself. Talk a little bit about some of the things that have become jobs rather than assignments over the last 2 years that you've been EVP of IT and CIO of the Global OpCo.
Well, first of all, it's a great question. And I realized pretty early on in my, executive management career, which I've obviously, been a vice president or above level for a long time. But I realized that, it was easy to just keep creating assignments, put that next thing on the pile, right? But there's a real differentiation when you needed, we also call it majors and minors. Is this a major or is this something we're minoring in? Clearly, if it's something you're majoring in and it needs dedicated focus, then we said this is a job, not an assignment. So we created clarity of that. To answer your question, FedEx DataWorks is a perfect example. That is a clear example. These are dedicated jobs.
Yes. Dedicated
team with specialty roles. I mean, the easy thing is to say, do you have data scientists? Well, of course. But there are many more roles that have to be there. Yes. And even things like, something as, straightforward today is saying, how do you design and engineer an ingestion framework, but everything from the technical aspects to the way we bring it to market. In this case, they were jobs. Another one I kind of alluded to earlier, but to be very specific is, we're going to be a lean, agile enterprise. It's easy to say, we're just gonna now be an agile enterprise. But we literally put dedicated roles in place, okay? And part of that was modernizing, so there's two things. We put dedicated roles in a group that run enterprise business agility. That group happens to report to me at FedEx, but it's a small but mighty group of people who are dedicated to helping transform, do the organizational change management. So we're truly a lean, agile enterprise. That was another example. These are jobs, not assignments. But then also, throughout the enterprise, as we work agile, it was important that besides jobs versus assignments, that the titles were accurate too. And we did a lot of that, focused on the right titles for the right jobs going forward. Yes. So very kind of a long answer, but definitely there is, clearly a job versus an assignment, and then being clear about what these jobs really are. That was the two sides of that made us really need to transform.
Well, and no apologies about long answers. I'm the one who asks long, rambling questions. So fair enough, right? In fact, that reminds me, the job titles. You said that 77% of your job titles have been changed, upgraded, digitally enhanced. Talk about that a little bit. What was that?
Well, absolutely. The big focus there was, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, people is the people side, and we have a dedicated focus on something called talent shaping. And, it is, and in talent shaping, there's a lot of things we're focused on, but one of them was ensuring a modern workforce, and that's everything from growth and learning and education and all the traditional things. But right away, it became apparent that, the industry has changed. Our focus has changed. What's important to us has changed. And the titles reflect that. So we've been undergoing, this is, almost probably 2 years in the making and still going, because we're only at 77%. But we basically looked at every job and said, what are we really trying to be as we go forward? What's the modern version of that job? And then we updated the titles. So I already mentioned some examples, but think of it, working in Agile inside of the, the agile, we're a lean agile enterprise, sure, but inside you're, in a safe principle, you're working on release trains. We have large solution trains, we have, release trains, we have scrum teams, even literally, a lot of people thought a project manager, well, that's just a scrum master, well, really,
Right.
not really, you know what I mean? There's differences between a project manager and a scrum master.
Yeah.
And so we literally upgraded, from scrum masters, release train engineers, product owners, product managers, but all the data positions, including, we already mentioned data scientists, et cetera. So we went through every single job family, and we went through a description of what was the job, what is the job.
Mhm.
Some of the old ones, they still applicable today and they should stay, or should they be different, including all the disciplines, software engineering, data, infrastructure, project management through the lean agile jobs. So every single job family we've gone through, and 77% of them, as we said, are already updated. But I will tell you that, the reason they're not all there yet is some of them are, they're kind of in the middle of transition. And we're really trying to decide what's the right titles and the breakdown. Interestingly enough, one of the things that's always been so important in IT, architecture positions, you and I've had it saying for years, you win or lose at the architecture level,
Yeah.
I always say you lead with architecture and engineering architecture, you lead with engineering and architecture. But even some of those, and breaking down what are truly enterprise architects versus solutions architects or domain architects, we're even working that at a different level, because the different groups had different definitions in the past. We're trying to have one definition. So again, I think these are long answers, but the truth is, this is a really important area, because people, it provides clarity of not only what the role is, but the excitement of what these jobs really are, and that they're modern jobs. So we're going to keep pushing hard at this. There's no doubt about it.
Well, and it also shows you, no matter where you are on the career ladder at FedEx, you can actually see what the other rungs are. I would assume these are not just titles; they have descriptions with them. So
yeah, absolutely. And but
fascinating.
Data scientists and data architect, that's another thing. There's kind of old and new connections to some of those, but we want to make sure we keep them modernized going forward.
Well, I've heard arguments about data engineer versus software engineer. So this stuff matters. One CIO friend of mine a few years ago was having a retention problem, and he partly solved it by just adding the word digital to a lot of his software engineering titles. And that just helped people feel like, well, yeah, we're advancing with the industry as we go. And speaking of all that, we have a question from our alert and watching audience. And would you be able to share your lessons learned in terms of change acceptance and resistance in your transformation toward this lean, agile business model? What are some specific steps you took to deal with that? That's
a very good question. And one of the things that I will tell you, I'll give you a framework that we started with a few years back, and how we had to evolve it. When we were really driving the principles of lean agile and truly an enterprise business agility program, we knew there was 4 areas of focus. First was people, second was process, third was architecture, and what we thought the fourth one was communicating, keeping everybody aware and engaged and understanding change. And so people was about, again, the new roles, what are jobs or assignments, titles, all things we've talked about. Process was when you're truly going from some things that were still waterfall to being truly full agile, there was a lot of processes to change, which also meant, especially if you think of the scaled agile framework or SAFe, the way you decomponentize work, there was a big focus on architecture change, including that business architecture and roles in the business that are really titled business architects became an incredibly important part of it. So we had to drive that. And then we thought we'd just communicate it. But the heart of this question is, early on, we realized we were wrong with that fourth one. It wasn't communications. It was OCM. It was organizational change management. And we really got to the point that says it isn't just about communicating. It's, it's all the principles of driving an organization through change. We use the ADKAR model, and ADKAR starts with just awareness, but literally we drove the fourth focus area as organizational change management. And the heart of this question is, will you have a lot of resistance? Did you have a lot of resistance? Absolutely, especially early on. And again, because we were just communicating, and we were sometimes communicating like, oh, just do this. It's the greatest thing you'll ever see. Yeah. No, that was the bad. What we really had to do was educate and describe and show value. And so it was lots of resistance, yes, but it was leader led. We were leading it, and we were, The saying, eat your
Being
own
led
dog.
by it.
One of the things, here's another funny one. Early on, we're driving this, it's a framework of people, process, architecture, and communications. We're making all this change, we're driving it forward, and we're managing it in a waterfall fashion. And we were like, right away, we wanted to hit ourselves on the side of the head and go, what are we doing? So we changed it to a truly agile structure, a PI cadence, which in our model, it's 10-week PIs, 2-week sprints. So we literally started to manage the change in the OCM as we moved to it in 10-week planning increments, 2-week sprints, and we were delivering change. And then as people started to see the value, we could show and demonstrate the benefits of being lean, being driving towards lean agile. And then, I already mentioned the word leader led. Once the value started to show up, even on all aspects, obviously from technology and engineering, that was the partnership we had. We started with IT and our engineering partners as really the business and IT champions to put this together. But there was a lot of resistance everywhere else. As soon as we could show demonstrated value of speed and value realization, then we started to get all the other disciplines to come along. And then that's where it became leader led. Each of the leaders of their own functions were championing to get educated and to embrace our new way of working. And so all the things that used to be steering committees, or we'd have these, I would call them PACs, portfolio action committees. I think I remember the name now. They were everywhere. I mean, they were all over the place, and when you sat down and you looked at how many initiatives are prioritized, I will tell you the real number was in the thousands. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
And suddenly we got down and we said, if you look at the enterprise around the world, it's a total of 9 portfolios. And we are going to manage it as 9 portfolios with one enterprise one that creates clarity of what's the enterprise priorities. And so if you're still an OpCo, these OpCos are huge. They still have their priorities, but there's great, perfect visibility, or increasingly perfect visibility of the enterprise and the OpCo priorities, and how in a lean agile enterprise, especially as it's a pull, not a push model, you pull work every 10-week planning increments, all of these massive teams out there pull work every 10 weeks. And clearly, and again, I'm trying not to be too long here, but clearly what you're seeing is, we're able to do more. We're able to do it faster. And more importantly, it has a great focus. One of the biggest principles of Agile, right, is take an economic view. So we're looking at what's the most valuable things. And all of a sudden, once you see success, it's the side of it gets easier. So the question is, was there a lot of resistance? Absolutely. It was hard to get past that, but it was really the discipline of making this leader led and showing value. And then once the team started executing this way, I would literally show up in meetings just physically before the pandemic and since then digitally. And the first time I was in a group session, somebody came up to me that I'd worked with for decades and said, I hope we never go back to the way we used to work. She said, this is how you feel like a small, nimble company. And that was there was many comments like that, but that was the one line that caught me right away. You feel like a small, nimble company, like a startup. And I thought, boy, if somebody in the heart of what they were working on, which was huge, felt that way, we were on the road to, being much more successful and faster in the way we did work. And that's really been the story. Now it's a journey that continues. I mean, there's still, right, in every company, there'll be more priorities than there is capacity, right? There'll be more work than there's capacity. So it's about value. You got to work on the most important things.
Well, there may be more assignments than there are jobs, that can take them on. Well, and you talked too, when we spoke earlier, about how it was a transformation, moving fast toward the future example about how it can go badly when you haven't done that assessment of the organizational change management involved. And I've had other CIOs point that out, that people think that you put the people, process, and technology, and then you communicate about it. But then there's this kind of like secret underlining on it that's all about the culture and how people are feeling about their work. And that's managing change.
Yeah, absolutely. The cultural aspects are always number one. And then focused on organizational change management is how you drive it forward. But I'll tell you, one of the things, I guess, being in FedEx for so many years, traveling the world, meeting with different regions, different groups, I kind of developed this focused focus on listening, where you hear words like we and us when everybody's talking about any kind of change or any kind of dedicated focused work we're doing. When the teams keep saying we and us, I always know it's going to be successful. And and some of early on, I would say, to that last question, one of the things that early on was, there's a lot of them and they, or they want to change, and that's when I knew we had a lot of work to do. And that's what really changed us from just communicating to driving the principles of organizational change management, the OCM part of it.
Right.
And that's where the they and them started to become we and us. And it got, and again, I don't want to say this is a journey, it's over. I just said that a minute ago, I know, but this continues to be a real focus for us. But the we and us is becoming more apparent every day.
Yeah, well, that's good. Now, this is we partly, I think, answered this when we started talking about the changes to job titles and the updates but there was a question about whether you made changes to performance management systems where you added core values as part of the measurement criteria. And that's really, I think, around the people aspects of how you were managing this change and upgrading and changing titles and all that. I would assume that the performance management measures changed along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. With it, and both just as one of our cultural focuses, but we went much more to something we call coach forward. Okay. And so it's a much more engaged coaching model. And a lot of the performance management of the past was just too often either quarterly or annually. Yeah. Where it's just, hey, here's what's going right, here's what's going wrong, and we are taking a much greater engaged focus on just it's all aspects of coaching, and it's continued. So clearly there's a lot more to it than that, but if people if people are working together and see that we're driving towards a modern future, all of us, right, and it includes modern titles and all the other things we talked about, then how we communicate and work together is an imperative to success. That's why we've taken much more of this coach forward model, and you're seeing so many benefits of it. And then also it's not, again, it's just another form of lean agile, right? I hate to say it, but I almost felt like the annual performance reviews of the past were just a waterfall method of performance management, and it's about team engagement and team success. And so that's why the coach forward model is successful for us.
Well, and just coach forward models, it's such a nicer terminology. When you say performance management, it kind of makes your spine straighten up a little bit. I can remember having arguments about, well, why did I only get an excellent rating on that and not an above and beyond? When it becomes about data where someone is putting numbers on you, I think it's very difficult for people to not argue with that, right? Especially, I was thinking technology people who are very data driven to begin with. Let me see. Another question we have is about addressing sustainability in technology. And I know you mentioned the 50-50 and closing down data centers. And I know this may be a little beyond your purview with the OpCo technologies, but is there anything you want to respond to that on addressing sustainability issues in technology?
Well, I will say addressing sustainability as a whole is definitely a major. It's a focus. And talk about, we talked about jobs versus assignments. So our ESG
job, not an assignment,
is dedicated jobs. Okay, so we've created a focus. We've said as a corporation, we're going to invest more than it's now actually $2 billion on all aspects of ESG. We're electrifying our fleets around the world. There's so many things we're doing. And that's the major. And inside of that, there are technology components. Okay. And certainly, from starting year, and again, it's really front and center to all companies today. But years ago, decades ago, the whole principle. One of our enterprise data centers is in Colorado Springs, and on the that part of off the Rockies, and the environmental aspects and the ability to get much more efficient cooling. I mean, we started that decades ago as a real important part of, because data centers are big consumer of power and the demands of cooling, et cetera. So we've always been focused on it, all the way back when we would say that's a gold LEED certified data center. But today it's just part of the bigger ESG focus of FedEx Corporation. There's no doubt about it. And it would be in every aspect of technology, and then our physical assets as well. So yes, it's a definite focus. Yes, we do report on it like everybody else. In fact, another thing I'd mention is, before ESG became the, how everybody looks at this and the standard terminology, we created every single year, we created what was called a global citizenship report. And that's where we talked about all the things we were doing there. So yes, it's the focus. It's an increasing focus. And yes, we're putting a lot of investment to it. But this is where we think, not only is it the right thing to do, there's return on it as well.
Sure. Okay. Now, next question, I think you'll enjoy a lot. What did you change in your leadership style to attract and hold on to talent? How has FedEx on the technology front dealt with the great attrition, or the great, what is it being called? The great resignation. I know most companies, no matter how great their reputations, have had more turnover and higher attrition numbers than in the past. So what's your approach been to that?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of different terminology around it, as you started with. And, one of the things we've liked to say, in fact, Rob says this a lot, is, the great reassessment. Many people got to reassess during the pandemic. Life changed, business changed, locations changed, or so many things changed. So we view it as kind of the great reassessment, first of all. Okay.
Good.
And we think, being tightly connected with our team members and helping with that is important. Now, I will say, we're certainly not seeing, massive attrition like many businesses are reporting, but we are seeing more. So, our focus in this has been doing the right things for the team members. And, that we've talked about many of the things from, what is the work? What's the modern work, the exciting work? How does it make a difference? One of the things we like to say in FedEx, what we do matters, right? So connecting the work to how it matters, both in society and the success of our customers, and what we do in supply chains, success in, and what we deliver our shareholders, et cetera. So we like to connect the work to value, okay? We like to make sure we're driving towards modern work and teams feel empowered. Growth and learning is a big part of it. Obviously, there's, benefits and comp and all those kind of aspects as well. But, and we do think, and it's kind of, this question's a great culmination of so many things we talked about. We think the hybrid work model is a big part of it, right? We think our cultural pillars, we've always, FedExers, it's funny, we had something this morning in the live chat, something came up about how many tenured people there are. And everybody started putting in, like just in live chat, 25 years, 34 years, 40 years, 28 years, 20 years. And then there was somebody that said 1 month and looking forward to the day I have 30 years. And
that's so nice.
Anyway, it's a culture that we've had people that, generally make a career and stay here.
Yes.
And we have proven statistics on that. However, here's the most important part of the answer to the question is, but we don't want to assume that, and we don't want to take that for granted. We have to get better every day. And the way we get better is listen to the employees closely, right? We're all part of the same team, right? Do the things that lead us to the future and keep the work exciting. And most importantly, connect to the value of the corporation, the values of the corporation, and the value delivery that we want to make. And so anyways, that's, I don't want that to sound like too generic of an answer, but we just culturally believe in it. And in the technology team, it's been clear. And obviously the most susceptible people to being recruited are the most advanced modern skills, right? And but even in there, the turnover is only slightly above any normal turnover. So we're, again, this is an everyday battle like so many other things in business today, right? But we're really focused on making sure the team members are empowered and valued, and that we have the flexibility that makes them want to be at FedEx for the long term.
Okay. Great answer. Great answer. That was a very good question too. Our audience has been awesome with the questions. I want to talk now. I want to pivot over to, I was going to ask an innovation culture sort of question, but I don't want to I don't want to let you go before we talk about a little bit more about the DataWorks business, because I think you made mention of something you called the 4 levels of clairvoyance in data. And I wrote that down in great big red letters because I thought that was something that was pretty interesting to talk about here. And I think that it segues nicely into the entire innovation discussion as well. So let's talk about FedEx DataWorks and those 4 levels of clairvoyance and data. We'll start out by you telling me what that means.
Well, I'll tell you what they are. And remember, we've been a big data company forever because of what we do billions literally of transactions a day. The 4 levels are, and this, by the way, this isn't a FedEx only thing. You see this in the industry all the time, but we use it to describe our mindset shift. It used to be, that first level is what happened, and in every business, especially a massive operational business like us that has to provide a unique service to customers, we had all kind of reports and automation around what happened yesterday, the last sorts, the last flights. The first level is what happened. Second level is what is happening. And, over the last 10 or so years, that got to be pretty common in all businesses, including ours. Real-time awareness of what's happening. And so how you manage differently, how you run a sort or run your network and exactly in real time, what's happening. The third level, though, and it's only, it's getting more sophisticated now, but it is, what will happen. And that's really a lot of our focus, what will happen, and creating truly sophisticated data models and the AI capabilities that we optimize before it happens, right? That's the real value. But the fourth level is the truly clairvoyant level, and that is, what don't we know? I'm a huge baseball fan, and the example is there were so many beliefs in baseball of like when you run a runner over and stuff that absolutely weren't true when you really could look at the data, but people believed them for decades. And now the data shows there's different things. Well, business is the same. There are so many aspects of things we believed were most efficient, and we find out when you can look at like a global network in real time, and you can create models that not only show what's happening, but simulate all different scenarios, you find things that you just didn't know. And that's a lot of the reason, so I know you said it'll segue into your next question, but those 4 levels are the way we describe to people what we're after, describe to the team, describe to, our business partners, et cetera. And it's really those 3rd and 4th levels that can create value that just either wasn't known or value that's there that we haven't gotten yet. And so that's why we decided to major in this, right? Create jobs on assignments and put an organization, central, focused, dedicated organization that does this for a living for the corporation and for our customers both. That's why we decided to centralize that.
Well, and mostly they're not emerging anymore. They're actually surging technologies. I think you called them like AI, machine learning, the IoT. I mean, how many billions of sensors are in all the FedEx businesses today? Are there any technologies that you think are going to be especially important for those 3rd and 4th levels of clairvoyant data? Something we can see today?
Yeah, another great question. I'll start at the boring side. I don't want to say boring, but the hyperscale of today is what makes this all possible. Okay, it's about the massive hyperscale of cloud and the capabilities we have to process and analyze and model things that just literally 5 years ago would have been either impossible or much harder. That hyperscale is incredible. But then it's connecting, I would say to us, that's why I said even in our infrastructure, it's a colo strategy, it's a cloud strategy, and it's an edge strategy. Because even when you think of a company like us with, thousands of facilities and, a couple 100,000 vehicles moving all the time, the compute on the edge and the scale at the edge of autonomy, automation, robotics, et cetera, IoT, just in our vaccine packages, the most, we like to call that the most important work we've done in the 50 years of FedEx is, the supporting the pandemic and movement of vaccine packages. Every one of those that we call a SenseAware ID node on them. And it's an active sensor. And we were literally processing 25 billion transactions a day just from the vaccine packages. And so that edge capability in all things connected in real time and at real scale, so I think it's not one answer to your question. I think it's the integration of these things coming together, especially in a physical business, especially autonomy, automation, IoT, all at scale with the real time, analytics capabilities of today. I think that's really don't get me wrong, there's a lot of other really cool technologies. We pay attention to them all. In fact, we do a portfolio day where we look at, emerging companies and all kind of things in a couple of weeks. But anyways, I could answer many different examples, but I think that the heart of your question is where's it really going to make a difference? It's all of that coming together that's making a difference.
Yeah. Well,
and, the other things we talk about at FedEx, and this isn't meant to be a commercial at all, but in every meeting all the time from the chairman down has been, safety first, and just in safety technologies. And again, when we talk about, automation and autonomy and stuff, it's about how our team members can work more productively and safer, not replacing. And that's a big part. And so we look at safety's always first, and in all of this, safety always comes up as the number one thing. And then there's all kind of other value too.
Well, and in some ways it's a kind of unfair question to say. It's like if you ask a great chef who's put together an amazing meal, say, tell me which one ingredient was the most important one. I mean, it could end up being water, because without the water, you can't make the pasta, that sort of thing. So,
well, I've said this a couple different times. I think somewhere I said this publicly not too long ago. One of our mutual friends, Charlie Feld, decades ago said something to me that resonates every day. Decades ago, he said one day, I'm just talking. He said, I think the CIO title is wrong. It shouldn't be Chief Information Officer. It should be Chief Integration Officer.
Yes.
And, and I thought at the time, I'm like, boy, Charlie, you're right. 20 years later, I think if it's about the value of what we can integrate at speed today and the scale we can integrate is so different. And that's why the answer to your question is, I said, I think it's the integration of some of these truly advanced things at hyperscale that has changed everything.
Yes. Well, and I've had the good fortune in my career a couple times to have Charlie on stage. And so I know that CIO stands for Chief Integration Officer argument. It's not even an argument. I think it's absolutely true. And I think that's why we're seeing so many CIOs rise up into very significant business positions now. There are more of you out there that are becoming, the SVP of supply chain, the CEOs, the chief operating officers, chief administrative officers. It's just that whole chief thing, I think, has really come home to roost in IT, which is it's very gratifying to see it. I love it.
Yeah, and we're fortunate. We've been led by one of the great innovators in our founder, Fred Smith, who now has just moved to executive chairman in a recent announcement. But now our president and CEO, Raj Subramaniam, he is a digital leader first, very focused on digital, very focused on data. And so, that's the great innovation, and that great focus on digital and data is a perfect example of FedEx transitioning again and keeping core focus on the future.
Yeah. Well, and that's often my wrap-up question is about leadership and things you've learned during the pandemic, but I think we've talked about that a lot already. So I want to sign off essentially with a little discussion about the innovation that is part of the DNA at FedEx. And I also wanted to congratulate you on yet another CIO 100 Innovation Award this year. And tell us a little bit about what you won the award for and what this says about FedEx and keeping that innovation spirit humming along.
Well, innovation's been in our DNA from our founder and chairman, Fred Smith. And we always like to use that quote. And Fred said in 1978 that the information about the package is just as important as the package itself. Today, that wouldn't mean much, but in 1978, it was so part of its time. So innovations, jobs versus assignments. There's jobs that are dedicated to innovation, but on the other hand, innovation is everybody's job. The award was just won for our airline technologies group, which is it's a group a group under me that I'm just so proud of, because they literally look at everything as being automated and innovate to break what things were assumed in the past. That a highly regulated part of our business that it was, riddled with paper and all the process of paper. We've become paperless, and we believe we're the first paperless airline in the industry. But basically, it's a digitizing of everything to create real-time information using AI over things like, for maintenance issues, predictive. What is this issue? What's the predictive repair? And putting this in our maintenance tech's hands, our pilots' hands, everybody in the airline. So basically, that what we won the award for was this full-blown, the innovation around changing all the way the airline works and digitizing every aspect of it.
Yes.
And this team's been at it, and it's just so advanced in what we can do in the airline part of our business today. Faster cycle times, less downtime of aircraft, more efficiency for our pilots, absolute time saving for our maintenance technicians, who are just such an important part of our business. So anyways, that's in a short answer, that's what it's about.
All right. Well, that's great. And it's especially apropos since you've got one of those FedEx planes parked outside your virtual window there behind you. So thank you so much for joining me today, Ken. As I predicted, our hour here flew by, and we had wonderful questions from the audience. And we've really appreciated having you here today to fill us in on everything going on for the global operating companies at FedEx.
Well, thank you, Mary Fran. It's an honor to, be on your show, and it's always great to see you. So thanks for having me.
You too, sir. All righty. If you joined us a little late today, do not despair. You can watch full episodes later today here on LinkedIn and also on CIO.com in our library of Leadership Live broadcasts, and also on YouTube on our IDG Tech Talk channel. CIO Leadership Live is also available as an audio podcast on wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we want to thank our new sponsor as well, the Fairfax County, Virginia Economic Development Association. Check them out. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation today with CIO Ken Spangler as much as I did, and that you'll join us again 2 weeks from now at noon Eastern on Wednesday, April 20th. And when we'll be talking then with CIO David Rice of the University of Miami Health System. We really appreciate having you here and tuning in today. Do take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Tech Talk, where you can find all of the previous, I think it's 84 now, episodes of CIO Leadership Live. Stay well, and we'll see you here again next time. Thanks.